Hello and welcome back to the next in the series of Idiot's Guides to Modding Creating Custom Content in F1 2020. This video will cover the pit crews, the pitwear for the team. It'll cover everything as before in terms of where to find files to modify, what the easiest ways to modify them are, and what each part is when you're trying to modify them from a flat model, to try and alleviate some of the filling about to make them work. Now the pit crews they're not the hardest thing to do, but they're probably the hardest thing to perfect, because the only time you will see the pit crews themselves is during pit stops. So you only really get to see them once or twice a race, unless you're really unlucky. But it's a little bit harder if things aren't quite matched up in order to gauge, because that's the only time you can do it. So from things like race highlights, there's a few things that we will need to get first. So using your ERP, the Ego ERP tool, you go back into, so come out of Garage Crew, we'll go back to the start. So we go into our main folder, our main F1 folder. We go into the asset groups folder. We want the animation package this time around, scenes, and we want pit stops. So we go into there. We want 2020 pit stops and the pit stop thing here. Now within this, you've got all the relevant different, you've got the lap boards, you've got the pit lights for each team, you have gantries, so you can make custom gantries over the top of your pit crew if you want to. I've not yet done that. It's something I'm going to tinker around with and maybe do a guide in the future. But what we're looking for is we're looking for an actual overalls. Now, as with every single file, there are three. You've got the D file, which is the actual textures. You've got the, I can find it. You've got the N file, which is the texture patterning, and the S file, which is the color coding. So this applies your finish. So for example, things that are pink will tend to be more chromed, things that are orange will be more matte, or the relevant different colors, it will apply a different lighting to the shirts to make them look like actual shirts. What we want is we want in here, let's go to here. So we want the Pitcrew D, the Pitcrew Delta file. So this contains the overalls and the boots for your pit crew. So what we're going to do is we're going to find whichever one that we want that is more closely based to what we want. Now I used for mine, it's called Sauber here, obviously the Alfa Romeo pit crew. I used these. So what you do is, as with every texture, you texture, export it to the file you want, and you also want to export the November file that matches that, and you want to do the Sierra file as well. So export those to a folder. We then go over into Photoshop. Now here is mine that's based on there. Now obviously you can see the design. I'm going to, again, like I have in previous videos, break down exactly what area does what. So let's divide this up. So we've got some key areas here. So when you're designing your look, you've got this. This is your front panel of your look, your main body of your overalls. You've got the bits on the side, so here and here. These are the rear panels of your suit, and they meet in the middle. So if you're going to put a design on the back, say you wanted some writing here, you'd have to half and half it here. So you'd have to tinker a little bit with the lining up. So things like that can be a bit fiddly. I've kept it nice and simple on mine. The only thing that I need to line up here is I've got little Welsh flags on the back, and there's one that I've covered with this line, just on the back of my overalls. You've then got the sleeves here. So they are cuffs down. So the writing always goes upright, and these are the left and the right sleeves. And then lastly, you've got the shoes for the team. Now I've left Sauber's, Alfa Romeos the same as they were. I've just changed the accenting on the shoe to match my race suit. Now a few things you'll notice on here, again, I've put my custom team name in there. So I've just put a type box in there and just typed that in and lined it up. I've got fake sponsors in here as well. And you'll notice I've left this area blank. That is the area where your team badge will appear on your custom overall. So if you put stuff there, it will look odd when it clips in. So leave that area blank. That, in a nutshell, is the simple way to make a race suit. Now, this is pretty effective in here because obviously I've already got Pitcrew and everything written down the legs. I've already got some quite nice features that those overalls use. And that's why I say use overalls that you most want to match, because you will save yourself some work in terms of making features. By all means, if you want to put real custom stuff on there, then go ahead and do so. Just be mindful that you might have to tinker quite a lot in terms of going into game, coming out of game, in order to do that, because again, the only time you will see these is during pit stops themselves. So we're going to get rid of that. We won't save that. So we come on to this then, which is the Pitcrew Helmets. So again, in the same ERP, so still in the pit stop ERP, you will also have team helmets. Pitcrew Helmet, a Delta file, a November file, and a Sierra file. Again, they are the texture, or the design, the texture, and the finish of the helmet. So I use the Haas helmet, which is here. So I've used this, and you can see if I do that, you can see the similarities. So all I've done is I've covered up the designs on the helmet themselves, changed the liveries. One key thing I have done is I've changed the gloves as well. So you'll notice that the gloves here are completely different to here. Now what you can do, you don't have to, you can change the colors of these if you want. My first version of this was the Red Bull helmets. Now the problem with the Red Bull helmets is the color coding is very specific. So if you change the colors, it looks very strange, which is what kind of happened to me. The gloves, however, I quite liked. So I had this panel on that Delta file. So what I then did to transfer this across, to change the design of the gloves entirely, I basically copied that out at the same scale and pasted it in. Now it's key that if you change something in here, it has to match in the other two files, in the texture and the coloring files. So what I've then done within those files that I've got is I've also pasted their representative parts for these gloves. So for example, if we go back to my race suit liveries, we go into Pitcrew, we go into Pit Helmet, and we load that. You'll see that the shapes here are Puma gloves as opposed to what's on the actual thing. So all I've done here is I've copied this square out of the other design, the Red Bull design, and pasted it at the same scale here. So it's exactly the same. I've not messed around with this at all, apart from colouring out the badges that were on there, the Haas badges. And the same again with this folder, the November folder, the November file, is you can see here where I've just patched out where the Haas liveries were, just to make sure that when we put the new texture over it for our helmet, we don't have shiny areas or different areas or embossed areas on the helmet which match the old helmet. So basically it will look like we've borrowed it from Haas, painted it over what is an entirely borrowed helmet. And again, I've pasted this section in from the other one. Now, to load these in, so there's 6 files now in total that we need to then load in. So, close all that. So we need to go into your search bar on your ERP, and you go put in my, that's enough. So you've got the Pitcrew file here and these two. So as per always, textures, import, load it in. Same for the November file. If you haven't got Sierra file, don't worry about it. Leave the mic file blank. Same for the Pitcrew helmet. Same again, load your Delta texture in, load your November texture in, and load your Sierra texture in. One thing I didn't mention, while I remember, let's go back to it. So let's go back to the helmet. Let me get my old white brush out. So you'll notice here we've got a couple of things going on here. So this is your glove design. It will be set out in a certain way. The fingers are separated. I don't know for what purpose that is in the game, but they are. Just keep that, just change the colors, don't move those relevant parts around. This part here then governs the parts around your visor for your helmet. Literally all I've done in this panel here is put 2 lines in and change the sponsor on the front of the helmet. The helmet then is separated down the middle, as you can see, and wraps around to meet in the middle. So if you put a design here, you'd have to put the other half here, and vice versa. You have to also be careful because the visor will come down over here. So any design you put behind here, you might lose. Easiest way to explain that is if you were to go into the Red Bull design, you'll see a bull design here and you'll see part of it mirrored here, and that's because where they overlap it lines up in the helmet. I didn't mention that. I should have mentioned that. It's very naughty of me. So once we've loaded this, we go in again, File, Save, and that then is it. That's the only place you have to upload this, is to this pit stops textures. From there, it's just a case of going into races, doing pit stops. The best way I found is just do a race. Just do a race with a pit stop in it, and then watch the highlights afterwards and literally break it down. Unfortunately, because I know some of the things you change, you can go into the in-game theater and it will change things. So things like car designs and that, you can look at that, but obviously that doesn't tend to show pit stops unless something happens. So you can't really do that. So it is a little bit of tinkering and effort, and that's why it's the less you adjust on the November file and the Sierra file, the absolute better, because you're basically using something that's a proven concept in the game that's designed for that helmet. So if you can use something that's based in the game, you are simply just making your life a little bit easier. I'm going to leave this video here. So that's now the pit crews are now done. We've got our team uniforms, we've got our custom badge. Next up comes our driver's uniform, our helmet, and then the main event, which is the car design itself. On the screen you'll see a link to the playlist for these videos. You'll also see a link to the very first video in the series. You also see a subscribe button. If you found this useful at all, please subscribe. It would really help out, and it will mean that more people can see these videos and actually find out, and so that I'm not here sat talking to myself. Until next time, until the next video, goodbye.